Hello and welcome to another edition of the Yoga Well podcast. I'm Chase Bosser, Executive Director of the Yoga Well Institute. Today I have with me a longtime friend and colleague and student, Marcel Allbritton. So Marcel, so good to have you on.
Thank you. It's great to be on. It's always great to connect with you, Chase.
Marcel has worked with me as an individual one-on-one student since 2006, and he has a Ph.D. in organizational communication, but his educational journey and the way that it is intertwined with yoga is very interesting. So Marcel, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. When I was in undergraduate, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I liked communication. And so I wasn't sure that's what I really wanted to do, but I was certain that it was something I liked, I had an interest in. So I studied communication in general, interpersonal, intercultural communication, small group communication, and even mass communication with media, newspaper, television. And I then went and got my master's in communication as well. And I focused a lot on organizational communication. And then I ended up going into to get a doctorate and a Ph.D. in organizational communication in Syracuse, New York. And the short story of it is I was kind of in the beginning of this, I guess around the middle of this doctoral degree. And all of a sudden I realized I was still in kind of elementary school in terms of understanding myself. So I started looking for some kind of system that would help me understand myself better. But the biggest motivation was I was experiencing anxiety, like most students in doctoral programs.
Yes,
and
exactly right.
I was looking for a solution. And I went to a few yoga classes that were pretty bad from my perspective and my experience. And then I found a really good one. And it was someone in this lineage. And I started studying yoga with him. And then within a year, he was teaching me Yoga Sutras. And then first time in my life I've ever been certain I knew I was going to do something. I went to Chennai, India for 2 months, and that's where I met Chase. So background in communication and organizational communication. And then I found yoga and I was like, I really want to focus on this. So started my whole career all over again with yoga therapy and studying with Chase. So that's kind of the gist of it.
You know, I went to university in Colgate, which is in the Syracuse area. And there was actually a music professor there by the name of Bill Skelton. And Bill Skelton took a group of students to India every other year for 30 or 35 years. It was a long time that he did it. And at one point, in the early 60s, he got very, very sick. And he ended up as a student of Krishnamacharya's in Chennai and really benefited immensely from that. His wife, Mary Lou Skelton, would say, saved his life, but he was a little bit more reticent to admit those things. And then Mary Lou saw that and got interested in studying yoga herself, and she became a student of Krishnamacharya until he stopped teaching Westerners, at which point she became a student of his son, Mr. TKV Deshikachar, and she was instrumental in bringing Mr. Deshikachar to the United States. So he came in 1976 and taught a January course, which at that time Colgate University had a format where you had regular classes in the fall and spring. There was 2 semesters. And then in January, they had a whole month where they did a January course, and that you were required to do, I think, 3 of them in your 4 years, and you spent 1 month studying something in depth. And Mr. Deshikachar came to Colgate University and delivered a series of daily practices and lectures for the January program that became the religiousness in yoga. So that's where that book came out of, was the lectures that Mr. Deshikachar gave at Colgate University. And then Mary Lou also taught in yoga around the area in Syracuse, etc., which is how that's how David Jacobs, I think that's the man you were referring to.
David Jacobs was my first teacher, and his teacher was Martine Burat, who studied with Mary Louise Skelton.
That's exactly right. So, and Mary Louise Skelton was like my introduction to Mr. Deshikachar, because I went on a study abroad program with Colgate to India, not knowing anything about yoga. And here was this incredible man saying, here's who you are and what you are, and here's what the relationship is to the world. It blew my mind. It's like, okay, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Sounds like you had the same experience with David.
I did. It was a wonderful experience. And then I went to India, and I was in the middle of my time in India. I was at the Mandiram, which is a clinic there where they teach yoga, but also they provide yoga therapy, and they see like 1,000 clients a month or so, 2/3 of it physician referred. And I was there taking some classes, and I heard someone very loudly in this staircase reciting cowboy poetry. And that was my first connection to you, Chase. And and I had been, initially, my interest in yoga was to study it in a really more traditional way. I was looking for a teacher to learn it. I guess something in me knew that's the more traditional way. And I met Chase there, and then I went to San Francisco totally on a whim, not knowing what was there. And then sometime after that, I was studying Yoga Sutras with Kate Holcomb in her home. And then less than a year after that, you started moving to San Francisco. You moved to San Francisco to work there, begin work with the Healing Yoga Foundation. And I asked you if you would be my teacher, given that David was now on the other side of the country. And he kindly said yes. And then I started studying with you. And I got lucky. I found you when you actually had some time to spend, which was me kind of winning the lottery there. But so I basically finished up my doctorate when I moved to San Francisco, and then I was mainly interested in the yoga for my own healing, and I was fascinated by it. And the more, like you, Chase, the more I learned about it, the more I experienced, I was just, whether or not something's working by your experiences. In other words, how it's making you feel and what it's feeling like. And I just kept following my own healing. And and then studied yoga therapy because you suggested that would be a good thing for me to do.
Well, what Mr. Deshikachar gave is just incredible. We've both just lucked out by finding this lineage of yoga, and really just it is so broad at the same time as it is so deep, right? And there's so many different avenues for people to really interact with it and to be changed by it. And what I want to talk with you about today is how you have taken the yoga really and applied it in your work as consultants to integrative medicine organizations. And I'm really interested in the way that you have made that transition, because here we have a ancient philosophy which is interested in what is the state of the person and how are they functioning. Can describe it on many levels: body, breath, mind, behavior, emotions, etc. And it has all of these technologies for shifting how that's functioning. And then you've applying that both on individual levels with your core resonance process, and you're also applying it to groups of people that are running an organization and coming together to provide healing to other people. And I'm just super interested in how that works.
Yeah. So, a big part of all this, what I learned in my own process of healing and my own practice of yoga is that your experiences are what shape you. And everybody is the way they are because of their experiences. And like your experiences are your experiences. They're not someone else's. So what I began to understand in healing, that a big part of healing is about integrating your experiences. So I had this background of a few decades actually in communication and in working with organizations and basically studying how organizations work, how small groups work, how from a social science perspective, how people communicate and make meaning in organizations. And it was really clear to me that how do I take the yoga, the foundation of the yoga, and look at what I had already learned about organizations and human communication through that lens. And the way it kind of ended up sort of making sense for me was I became a yoga therapist. So I was seeing people in a one-on-one clinical setting using tools of yoga to help them with their health issues. But along the way of doing that, I realized that there's a process of healing or transformation, not just healing, but transformation. And while with each individual person, I had to see them for who they were in their process and explain and help orient them in a way that worked for their context, I realized that there was a common process in healing and transformation. And through practicing yoga, it allowed me to see more and to understand more. So it's not just the knowledge of yoga, as Chase was mentioning, probably even the more important part of it is the practices and how they shape I'll use your phrase, Chase, how they shape your earth suit, your container.
I'm really interested in this process, Marcel. And so can you tell us a little bit about the process? What does it entail, and how are you operating in it or running through
Sure.
it? You can start with the individual, or you can start with the organization.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the individual because it always starts with the individuals. My understanding, my practice of yoga and my understanding of yoga and practicing yoga therapy helped me see that what we're doing a lot of times is we're seeing the inner potentials of an individual person, and we're helping them align with those and grow them and cultivate them. So there's a disconnect. The individual has some patterning, some conditioning, and a lot of life experiences that are kind of blocking their fully realizing those potentials. And so
I want to just pause you for a moment.
Yeah.
I want to just pause you for a moment, because that is such a nice way of articulating yoga philosophy from avidya and samskaras, and that you really have putting it into this is what it's saying, and this is what it means for you or a person in their life, and it's just so nicely said. So you saw.
Yeah, and what became a big part of my process was how to take these principles of yoga and translate them for different context. Because like I learned in my training and in yoga itself that it's the function that is the most important thing, not necessarily the form, meaning the function of what and why, what something is doing and how and why it's working. The form can be a yoga class or a facilitated session with a team of people in an organization. It's the principles. So that kind of the inner potentials and helping with the alignment of that, I saw that was really like central. And so I had been doing a lot of work with organizational processes and small group processes and even coaching with people individually for many years. And I took what I had learned in doing that and kind of listened to my knowing, and also just wanted to redesign those processes to come from more of these ancient principles and these ancient teachings. So I changed them a bit. And what I realized was that the most important thing I'm trying to get at was, what is the alignment for an individual person or a group of people or organization? Meaning, what is it that they really care most about? What gives them the most nourishment, what helps them to feel most alive or engaged? And so I developed some different processes using facilitated approaches to help individuals and organizations identify what that, I call it, core alignment is, and then to practice coming from those. So, these were like in yoga, similarly, they're practices. So you're practicing that alignment. But in developing these, I was coming from some of these principles that are really foundational in yoga. Like for example, it's about the process much more than the outcome. And another one is the model is about a model of influence rather than a model of control. And I was just integrating these principles that I was learning into all this background and experience I had working with individuals and organizations. And
it's amazing. I want to interrupt for a second.
And as a result, I came up with some specific processes, which I'm glad to talk about.
So I want to hear those, and I also want to just tie it in a minute, because what we have received, again, in the yoga is that the purpose of form is to deliver a function, right? And the function is involved in the process. And as long as we can stay with, everything that we're doing is an ongoing process, and there are results along the way, but we never really actually arrive anywhere, then we really open up to a direction in our life which is completely and totally authentic. And this is stuff that is presented in the center part of the second chapter of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, where he's talking about what is materiality, and specifically numbers 18 and 19. And to hear you say the way that you are saying it is just like, so nice. Because if you look at the Sanskrit and you start to think, well, what the hell does this stuff mean? It's like, oh, that's what it means. It's like, that's like so good. Other thing I want to point out is that, where you're saying that it's important for people to align with what it is that they care most deeply about. This is also like another model from yoga. So there is in the Panchamaya, there's these 5 dimensions of the human materiality, actually any being's materiality. And the core one is called the Anandamaya, all five, which is, say, emotions, all five of these mayas have 5 dimensions, and they are in the shape of a bird. So there's a head, 2 wings, the trunk, and a tail, right? So the bird of the Ananda Maya, its head is Priyam. And Priyam means what you hold dear, and here you have this, it's like what sets the direction of the person on an emotional level. And it's considered to be, the Anandamaya is considered to be the most powerful part of the human, human materiality. So here you're really going straight to the point of like, all right, what do you hold most dear? Are you doing that?
Yeah.
Are you, how often is that in your life? How do you get that in your life? And then let's make sure that you're operating with that in mind a lot. And it's so yoga.
Yeah.
And yet it's so, there's no word there that says yoga or anything like that. It's just so good.
Yeah, I like the phrase you use, that emotional set point, or, there were these interesting experiences that I had in watching my own progression, development in yoga, but also when I would work with people, I noticed that a lot of us were clear to some degree on what we care about and why, but our patterning and our conditioning and our day-to-day experiences keep us from accessing that in some way. So my question was, with yoga, it's like, at least the 2 forms I have the most experience with are in yoga therapy, seeing clients as a yoga therapist, but also in teaching yoga, mentoring over many years. There's a relationship, there's a container, and a process. And those 3 things really hold the whole kind of journey or experience of identifying what you hold, what you care about most deeply, and then aligning yourself with that. And so I was wondering if there was a way to apply these principles and develop some facilitated processes that helped people access that. And one of the ones I developed was this personal core resonance, which, the yoga actually informed how to develop this process, where it's 4 individual sessions. And basically the first 2 are interviews where I'm literally just asking the person what they really care about and why, and about their relationship to themselves. And it kind of creates a container, and they're put in a process, and there's a relationship, their connection with me. But what it does is the process, the way it's designed, kind of short circuits or circumnavigates a lot of things that get in the way of our connection with our own alignment, like self-criticism, self-judgment, focusing on immediate things we need to do, or limitations or constrictions. And it helps to identify what that is for that person in just 4 sessions. And then it starts to help them develop a practice with it. And essentially on an organizational level, I spent the last 8 years or so doing this with the Osher Center for Integrative Health in Vanderbilt. And it's helping, starting from the individual, but helping the whole organization identify what it is they care most about and why, like what is the work that they're doing. And I use this phrase where you're coming from is just as important as what you're doing. And it has been my experience that a lot of times we get into a lot of focus on outcomes or opportunities or challenges, and we're not actually connecting so much with where we're coming from, which is all about the alignment. That's our line to assess, am I aligned? So
It's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. You know, there's I think that this is really what differentiates a yoga therapist from, say, a physical therapist or from a psychologist, is because if you look at what is a physical therapist doing versus a yoga therapist doing, it from the outside, it looks like might be the same thing, and or it might be very similar kind of thing, and yet physical therapy obviously is 4 years of post-university education and several thousand hours of internship and whatnot. And from the yoga therapist perspective, it's, you know, our educational structures in the West have not developed to that point yet. And so I always tell people, don't be cheap PTs. Don't come and try to do physical therapy with a yoga therapist background. Know what you're doing with yoga therapy. Come from that. Because when you come from the perspective of yoga and you ask somebody to do a particular movement or a particular anything, it's going to be informed, and what your outcome and what your interest in, what you want the person to experience will be different than these other systems because of the principles and aims and goals, etc., of yoga. So I think that this is, you know, I can't agree strongly enough that where you're coming from is, you know, as important, actually, probably more important
Right.
than what you're doing.
I kind of wanted to ease people in, so I rephrased it. But I think the accurate saying is, as are more important than what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yes. What you were saying about yoga therapy, the way that the yoga has manifested most strongly for me in my life is with my own practice and development, my own practice and study of yoga, and my own development and transformation, and practicing as a yoga therapist, seeing clients in a one-on-one setting. That is where I, like the last, 13 years or so of doing that work consistently on those three fronts, studying yoga and my own transformation with yoga and as a yoga therapist, that has been what has allowed me to observe and understand and integrate these principles. And I think most of it has come from being able to work with, in that container, one-on-one with someone and support them in their development. And this is where I just saw so much of this come to life, which speaks to the two parts of this, which are, it's the practice that you do for yourself, which affects what you're able to see, the breadth and depth of what you see and understand. And then what I was practicing as a yoga therapist. In a way, yoga is a way of seeing and experiencing. It's a system of practices
Absolutely.
and knowledge, but it shapes you in a certain way. And what I really love about it is its primary goal is your own clarity, not someone else's clarity, and not the clarity of another system, even not the clarity of its own system, if it contradicts the clarity of your own knowing. So
Yeah.
I was like, I just love this.
Yeah. And I just want to vouch for your process, the core resonance process, because I myself have gone through it, and it has been enormously helpful in clarifying what am I doing as a yoga teacher, and as the director of an institute. What is important to me? And, you have these processes, you have these practices where if you're going to make a decision, then you stop and you look at your principles that have come out of the core resonance process, and then you identify, well, which ones of these are applicable to the situation, and then, you know, the decisions, they make themselves. They come out of, it's just so clear and so obvious because you're operating from something that's really core, not from worry or fear or wanting a particular outcome or etc. So,
yeah,
highly recommended.
I think to use the pun, I mean, that's really the core of it. Is what I realized is that in yoga therapy, but also in my own experiences, that oftentimes I wasn't coming from my alignment. I was coming from unsupportive patterning or conditionings, or I was coming from like opportunities, or I was being unduly influenced by external pressure. And like basically, I mean, my understanding of yoga, one of the principles of it is that, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. So all you have is your discernment and your alignment. I mean, you can't, like, you don't have certainty, but you have your own knowing and your discernment, and you go with that. So I was, a lot of the people that I work with the core resonance, they already kind of knew their alignment, but they didn't realize the degree to which they weren't actually using it consistently and effectively over time. And so part of the process just lets people see that. And I think for you, when I did it with you, one of the most powerful parts of it was that you actually realized that. You realized that disconnect, so which we all have, but it wasn't so much about the need to continue the in-depth practices as it was that feeling. It's like part of it, all of it is just practicing. You learn the subtle dynamics of your alignment. It's almost like their vibrational signatures, and you learn what they feel like, and you start to learn when you're in that space and when you're not. And you start to watch, and
that's the whole. This is yoga. I mean, this is yoga. This is absolutely yoga. This is yoga because the whole point of yoga is to, you know, if we look at what Patanjali is arguing or presenting, the first step is to come into some kind of balance, and you know, this is presented in the first chapter as what is imbalance look like. These are 30 and 31, right, as the first chapter. And then he says, if you come into balance, then you can actually do this deeper work of identifying specific blocks and relinquishing them and developing, developing the healing and the strengths and the capacities that, again, come from a deep place, but have to kind of have that foundation of balance first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, conceptually, part of the way I kind of paraphrased it and understood it for myself is you start with stabilizing. So you have to stabilize, like you said, balance, stabilize your system, and then you regulate it so that you have some capacity. And when your system is stable and it's regulated and you have some level of capacity, you're not just reacting to things, you're more responding. So it's almost like a continuum. There's a one end responsive, one end reactive. And when you're better regulated and have more capacity, which so much of the practice of yoga is about, you start to be able to see more of yourself and understand yourself more. And also, like, to the point of alignment, see when you're not in alignment. However, if you're stressed and not very well regulated, there's no capacity to work with alignment. You're just working with reaction. So basically, another principle I use with all this is yoga is it's inside out. It's not outside in, meaning that the point is that you are the container in the earth suit. The information is coming from inside out, not outside in. And so that you stabilize, then you regulate and you build capacity. And then after you have that capacity, you start to really understand yourself, and you become better able to be yourself, more of who you are, and in your behaviors and your communication. And then the last part is that you become more effective at influencing that, like influencing the experiences you have, the relationships you have. So I like to say this joke, like all this self-help stuff, like your life is what you make of it, all this, it's true after 10 years of work on yourself. All those are true. That's the point at which you understand more about yourself, and you're having this capacity to really shape more of your experiences. And then those experiences come back and condition you even more fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, as you're talking, I'm just reflecting on yoga is such a broad, multi-step process that it's hard to capture and articulate the whole breadth of it in one go. And you know, I've been working recently quite a bit with some academic presentations of yoga, and they're so focused on this far end, liberation, enlightenment discussion that they miss all of the different pieces of how do you actually bring yourself to the capacity of being able to have that activity or that pursuit. And so then there are some questions about, like, from them, you know, well, is any of this stuff that we currently see in modern day yoga, that wouldn't be yoga in the past, because you know, it's the yoga in the past, they're really focused on liberation and whatnot. It's like, no, wait. To get to that conversation, you have to do all of these other things. And what has come down to us in the at least textual record is this far high end, end game, or the far end, what I like to call discovery, but which is Mr. Deshagachar gave to us as shikshana, etc. And the preparatory stuff is therapy, and then maintenance, and I love the words that you're using as stabilize and regulate, and and then you can go on. And it's hard to see all of the different pieces at once and recognize, like, oh, this is what goes on, and this is how we move from where we are to what our system in an ideal functioning might look like or might be.
Yeah. I'm so with you on the I don't really think enlightenment and more advanced state of being are that helpful outside of our own experiences. And what I mean by that is either we have had the experience, or we're talking with other people who have also had the experience. Beyond that, I think this is about quality of experiences in life. And some of those exalted states, I mean, a lot of times in yoga, they describe the end point of a trajectory so that you get an idea of what you're moving towards. And that helps you understand where you are and how to move.
Yes.
But that's not saying that it's outcome based. It's helping your understanding of your experiences in your own practice. And so there was a certain point where I was kind of all into the real enlightenment spirituality thing. And to me now, it's mostly about quality of experiences. And it's like, what are the quality of your experiences? What does your life feel like? And I think that perspective refers to like 95% of people, and the other one, from my perspective, refers to like 5%. So I'm more interested in the 95%. And it's your conversation.
Well,
go ahead, Chase, please.
No, you go ahead and finish.
Well, our conversation is just helping me to think about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's primarily because I had these experiences and got connected with this knowledge and these teachings. And it's like, I'm so grateful. I'm so appreciative. And to me, the most apparent way that I can show that gratitude is to help other people with the same, meaning the principles and the experiences. They helped me so much. And I also love them, and I think they're fascinating. Like, first part of my yoga journey was about my suffering, and I think now I'm more into a part that's about my love for this stuff and how fascinating it is. But this is exactly what you actually helped me see from the when I did the core resonance. I came up with this idea that it's important that we at Yoga Well are a safe and supportive community, and that we help people come out of suffering, and that it's a sustainable transformation. It's not just like, well, something, I got better for a year, but then I got back into some other thing that was like that. I got trapped again. And the last piece that you're just describing here is that if you're interested, you can also train to help people in that process yourself. Yeah. So you come in, you come out of suffering, you sustain that, and then you may discover that piano or grammar or landscaping or sales or like whatever it is, that's what really turns you on and gets you oriented, etc. But and then you should go off and do that. But if it's like what you're saying here, it's like the yoga is like, oh no, this process, this is how this works. If that's what turns you on, come and do some studies here, because man, we have received from our teachers these amazing principles and practices to support them that explain the process. Here's who you are in your relationship to the world and why it goes wrong and what to do about it. Stunning. Yeah. Stunning. What you do at Yoga Well is provides a container and support for the breadth and depth of the whole process. I mean, my work with individuals and organizations, I do that with yoga therapy in clients I see over many years. And I do that with people I mentor in yoga therapy or in yoga. But this process that I developed, it helps people connect with their alignment and understand what it is and practice coming from it. But the real transformation, the real sustainable transformation, and ultimately that's what I hope, when someone gets more aligned, they start to be able to move towards where they can find that support and that container to work inside of, to help them. And to me, this is what, from my experience, has been really unique about Yoga Well Institute, in that, I had my container with my practices with you, but here's this sort of organized way of holding learning, deep study, interaction, and relationships, and practice and study of yoga. And I haven't, like for me, Marcel, thank you.
And for me, I think that you are doing the same thing by consulting with, the hospital and helping their integrative medicine division to orient around, well, what is it exactly that we do here? As a collection of individuals with a hierarchy, and to then operate from there.
I think the alignment thing, what I talked about, how this whole idea of process over outcome, I mean, this is basically these ancient teachings say the same thing. If you get the quality of your process developed well enough, you don't have to necessarily worry very much about your outcome, because the outcome is going to follow the process. And in many ways, what I'm doing this myself too, but I'm helping people practice is this practice of coming from your knowing and your alignment and doing that consistently. This is the thing that is going to bring you towards your fulfillment, because it's all about the quality of the experiences you're having. It's not about you're like, sure, the goals are important, but what's most important is what is happening for you while you're moving towards those goals, and what's the quality of your experiences. Like in yoga therapy, when people ask me what I do in yoga therapy, in that context, I say I help people have their experiences instead of their experiences having them.
Beautiful.
You know?
And I think this is a fantastic place to end,
Great.
Marcel. It's perfect. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking with us and sharing your experiences and your deep understanding. So I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Marcel, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us your vast experience and your deep understanding. It's been a wonderful play. It's been wonderful. Tell us a little bit about where we can find you if we want to follow up more.
Sure. You can go to coreresonanceworks.com. So that's Core Resonance Works, all lowercase, no spaces.com. And then also for the work I do with yoga therapy and yoga, this just my name, first and last name, no space. So it's MarcelAllbritton.com.
It has been a great pleasure and really wonderful. Thanks so much, Marcel.
Thank you, Chase.